All right, so we are in Genesis chapter 45. And so today we're going to be looking at what I like to call the piecing together of confusion. And I use the word confusion only because I don't have a better word. Let's just say, let me remove confusion. Let's say ignorance. Piecing together of ignorance, because God is not the God of confusion, so I don't want to use that word.
Amen.
But a lot of times we don't know what God is doing, and it just looks problematic. It looks like things are just not going the way I think they should go. If you took a poll, if you asked questions, I would not have chosen this. But that's why we have to give we have to yield to the Spirit of God, because the things that God chose for us to deal with, to handle, to experience, probably would not be the ones that you be like, yeah, give me that, and give me this, and give me that. We wouldn't have chose that. But God did. So therefore, He said, I will put no more on you than what?
You can bear.
Than you can bear. So now, does God lie?
No. Cannot lie.
All right. So therefore, in our struggles, in our ups and downs, in our heartaches and our tears and our crying and our feeling like we don't understand it, we still have to find a way to have faith that God knows what He's doing. Now, how good are we at doing that consistently? I know I fail quite often because I get frustrated and confused and like, what's going on? But then I come around. Because what? The Word of God starts bubbling up in you, and you start realizing, and that's important. So when we look at this story, we're going to see this situation, and we'll point out to say, well, when we look at where Joseph is, right now we see Joseph is what in Egypt? He is second in command in Egypt. But now, if you had to ask Joseph, choose your path to that, I doubt very seriously if he would have said, oh, I want my brothers to hate me first of all, and then I want them to hate me so much that they want to kill me, and then decide, no, let's not kill them, let's make money off of them, and then I want to get sent down to Potiphar, do a great job, but then have the wife lie on me because she's lusting after me and throw me in the dungeon. And by the way, when I'm in the dungeon, I'm going to help people, but then the people that I help, when they get out, they're going to totally forget about me. Who's going to choose that path? All right? So when you look at that, and then you got Jacob. You know, who's going to choose the path that Jacob went? I want to fall in love with a woman, and I want to be promised to have her as my wife. And then when on my wedding night, I want the wrong person to be there that I don't like, and the Bible says she had what kind of eyes? Y'all remember?
Oh yeah, she had that lazy eye.
Yeah.
Worry eyes.
Yeah.
Leah.
Yeah. So whatever it was, either her eyes were messed up or your eyes got messed up when you looked at her.
Hard
to look at.
Hard to look at.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There you go, brother. Yeah.
So then you have that, and then I got to work another 7 years for the woman that I really loved, and then then they're gonna be squabbling all back and forth and trying to have children. And the one I really care about is not going to be able to have children. But finally, she does have a child, and his name is Joseph. But then I've turned out that later on, that child's going to be, in his mind, devoured by an animal. That's what Jacob thinks, because that's what the brothers allowed him to. And then my wife that I really love is going to have another child, and she's going to die in childbirth. I mean, who chooses that? We don't choose it. But yet, when we read these stories, we have to remember that they are struggling to remain who they are in the relationship, knowing a God that can do all things. And therefore, even when we give the description of God, oftentimes we use these individuals. We say we're serving the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because of the things that they went through and yet stayed confident and faithful to God. Not perfect, but confident and faithful. Like how you do it, how we do, how I do. We're not perfect, But there's nothing you can do. I mean, I can get mad and upset and everything, but the one thing I'm not going to do is say, well, I don't believe in God anymore. That's not coming out my mouth.
Amen.
But I don't understand. I don't know why. I don't get it. We go there quite often, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
But then as you go through it, you're learning now to just say, you know what? Been through this a couple of times, and I'm starting to get this. God don't fail. Now, it may not happen like I like it, but that don't mean God's going to fail. So let me relax. All right? It's hard to do, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's on everything. Not just the big things, little things too. Now, can I just point out a little thing here that it's not that significant, but it's kind of comical in a sense. I'm watching the game last night. Syracuse Wake Forest. Syracuse got set 16-point lead, looking good. All of a sudden, all three of their big men foul out. And Wake Forest get a 4-point lead with just a few minutes left to go. And I sat in the chair and I said, you know what, I'm going to put my recliner up and I'm going to relax. Because whether they win or lose, it don't matter because God already knows. And I'm going to be happy. Now, I'm trying to convince myself. I'm going to be okay with whatever happens.
You're still going, come on.
Yeah, I'm still rooting. I'm still rooting, right? And I'm just going to be okay with the results. And I'm looking at this, and then maybe get a couple of foul shots, get this, and then last second shot. No, I'm just in my mind, just watching it, trying not to be angst about the outcome, knowing that I want the outcome to come specifically one way.
Absolutely.
That's all I want.
Absolutely.
But I'm trying not to get, and then bottom line, they win, and through circumstances that I wouldn't have predicted, but they won it. And so when the game was over, my wife got up, and I'm sitting there, but I had to confess. I said, babe, these games are stressful. These are more stressful.
For the parents, it is for the kids.
I said, and she's sitting over the couch like she about to have a conniption, hollering and screaming at the TV. And when it was all said and done, if I was to watch the game again, I can go on, I can watch the replay. Mm-hmm. How much worry am I going to have now?
None.
You're not going to use up.
Because I know, even though I know it's close.
Right.
But when I watch it now that's God's perspective. Yeah. He already knows the outcome.
That's right.
And he told us, since I know the outcome, don't worry. Because I know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for us to just do that because we don't know all the little the baby steps within the outcome.
Well, because some jacked up stuff happens in the Bible. Like, it's not like, oh, you win. It's like, oh, your son dies. And,
exactly.
You went to jail. Oh,
yeah.
then you win. What?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Those are real what? Real pains, real issues. And yet, God tells us, even with all of that, to do what?
Don't worry.
Trust in Him.
Have faith.
Remember when Jesus was on the boat, the winds and the waves and everything, and He's there what? Sleeping. Okay. You can't get. Can you get any more relaxed than sleep? I'm gonna take a nap. In the midst of the problems and the struggles, I tried to do that last night. I put the recliner up and tried. It just didn't work as well. Yeah. So I just throw that out to show you, and that's just a little thing, just a small thing, right? Because there are other things that are more significant, like family and health and finance, that are and relationships that are even more significant that we still have to deal with. But then we also got these little ones that we up and down, things at the job, it's the hot water heater. Sound like kind of funny. The motor sound like it's ticking. All that little stuff that we have to learn to just trust God. All right. So that's enough preliminary. Let's go into the reading here. 45.
Chapter 45. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him, and he cried,
"Cause every man to go out from me."
And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brethren,
"I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live?"
And his brethren could not answer answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. And Joseph said unto his brethren,
Come near to me, I pray you.
and they came near, and he said,
I am Joseph your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years, in the which there shall neither be earing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God. And he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Haste ye, and go up to my father, and say unto him, Thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, tarry not. And thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children, and thy children's children, and thy flocks, and thy herds, and all that thou hast. And there will I nourish thee. For yet there are 5 years of famine, lest thou and thy household and all that thou hast come to poverty. And behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that it is my mouth that speaketh unto you. And ye shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that ye have seen. And ye shall haste and bring down my father hither.
And he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck, and wept. And Benjamin wept upon his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brethren, and wept upon them. And after that his brethren talked with him. And the fame thereof was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brethren are come. And it pleased Pharaoh well, and his servants. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph,
Say unto thy brethren, This do ye, lade your beast, and go get you unto the land of Canaan. And take your father, and your households, and come unto me, and I will give you the good of the land of Egypt, and ye shall eat the fat of the land. Now thou art commanded, this do ye. Take you wagons out of the land of Egypt for your little ones, and for your wives, and bring your father, and come. Also regard not your stuff, for the good of all the land of Egypt is yours.
And the children of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the commandment of Pharaoh, and gave them provision for the way. To all of them he gave each man changes of raiment, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver, and 5 changes of raiment. And to his father he sent after this manner, 10 asses laden with the good things of Egypt, and 10 she-asses laden with corn and bread and meat for his father by the way. So he sent his brethren away, and they departed. And he said unto them,
See that ye fall not out by the way.
And they went up out of Egypt, and came into the land of Canaan unto Jacob their father, and told him, saying,
Joseph is yet alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt.
And Jacob's heart fainted, for he believed them not. And they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said unto them. And when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. And Israel said,
It is enough. Joseph my son is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die.
All right. Beautiful story. Beautiful story. And yet we still got more of this that we can we will see in further chapters. But when you look at this story, this is why I say this chapter is the turning of the corner. Because now all the confusion, the frustration, the ignorance that was going on has now begun to get what? Clear.
Clear.
All right. It's like they just were able they were just given spiritual glasses, and they were putting the glasses on, and things that were blurry now began to make sense. So when you look at this, there's so much in here. Number one, I'm not going to be able to. We'd be in here for 3-4 weeks if I tried to break down every little aspect of this. So I'm going to do a little bit of a just kind of gloss over it because it's so detailed, and I think you'll get so much out of this from just a personal standpoint. But when we start off, we look at this. It says, Then Joseph could not refrain himself before them that stood before him. And he cried and caused every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with Joseph, while Joseph made himself known to his brother. Now, that to me is just, he's sitting there, because remember before, when he sent them out, and he wasn't going to allow Benjamin to leave his presence again. So he set a little trap. So that when they went out, once again, he put all the money back into their sacks, plus all the provisions, the corn and the wheat and whatever it is that they were given. And then he said, take my cup and put it in the sack of the youngest. And that was Benjamin. And so then he said, now we're going to run this little trap, this little game. When you go out, I'm going to send my guards after them and say, hey, somebody stole my cup. And they said, why would we do this? And they said, well, whoever steals your cup, let that person die and we'll be your slaves. And then he's like, no, the person that stole the cup, what we're going to do, we're going to take him back to Egypt and y'all can be on your way. And they did the search and they found out that the cup was planted in what? In Benjamin's sack. And so in Joseph's mind, he's kind of wondering, okay, when they find that it's Benjamin, will they like allow Benjamin to be captured and just go back to the father, just themselves? But this is not the same brothers as they were previous years when they sold Joseph. They have what? They have grown. And that's an important aspect of our understanding of ourselves. Some of us have some past. We have some ways that we were. And have things that we did 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. That, thank God we don't do that now.
Amen.
And so these brothers changed. And so Judah was like, no. This ain't happening. We're not going back to our father without Benjamin. We're all going back to Egypt. And so they went back. And then so Judah began to explain to Joseph, I cannot leave here and not have Benjamin. My father would die. His life is wrapped up in this boy. If I go back there, he's just useless there. So we'll stay. He said, I'll stay. I'll do what you want. I'll be your servant. I'll be your slave. Let Benjamin go back to the father, because if you don't, he's done. And Joseph is listening to this story. So that's why you see this part here when it opens up here. And it says that Joseph could not refrain himself, because he's seeing now. And he's beginning to piece it together himself. All right. And so he said he could not refrain himself. And he had everybody go out, and then and Joseph made himself known unto his brothers. Okay, in verse 2 it says, and he wept loud. Now his heart is broke, because number one, Joseph sees the care of his brothers, and in Joseph's mind, the Spirit of God is allowing him to understand this was the purpose. And he's going to reveal that in a minute. He's going to say that. So Joseph is getting it. He's understanding. And he's being overwhelmed by what God has done. Look at what God has done. I had the dream, and this is the culmination of those dreams that I had that made my brothers jealous in the what? In the first place. And look at here. And it says, verse 2, and he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard it. So everybody hears this weeping. Okay, what's going on with Joseph? Something's up. Something's making him extremely emotional. Verse 3. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. His first thing, I'm Joseph. All right. Y'all did what y'all did. Y'all had no idea what was going on. Look at what God made of me. In spite of. Right? And then the next thing he says, does my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him. They couldn't say it. They're what? Shocked. They haven't. Now they've been given the information. They've been given the answer to the puzzle. But right now, at this particular time, they cannot process it. They can't allow it to just happen. They're sitting there dumbfounded. You ever have something like that come? It's like, and it's not so much that it's a bad thing. It's just I can't process what just went here, because your mind wants to get like, wow, but your guard is like, wait a minute, no, this can't be. Certain things can happen, and that could be something both good and bad. Did you just you can't remember? What was it last week before last, when my daughter came to me and said, Dad, Kobe Bryant just died. I couldn't process that at first. It's like what? You know, didn't sink in when I first heard it. And then as you get more and more information, you start saying, wow, okay. Wow. And then you start trying to, well, and they're looking at this and they're going, Joseph? And they can't understand what's happening here. And it says, and the brother, let me see, verse 3. Joseph said, and Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph, does my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his what? At his presence. Right. As you start thinking about it, you begin to recognize, if this is Joseph, the last time we saw Joseph, he was crying out saying, please don't do this to me. All right? And now they're wait a minute, if this is Joseph, and he's got all this power. But Joseph is putting it together. Look at verse 4. And Joseph said unto his brethren, come near unto me. First thing, what? Come near. Come unto me. What did Jesus say? Come unto me, all ye
that are heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
All right, all you that labor.
11:28.
All right, and so he's letting them know, number one, come closer. I want you near me. Come to me, I pray you. And they came near unto him. And he said, I am Joseph, your brother. Okay, now he added a different thing. First he said, I am Joseph. Now he said, I am Joseph, your what?
Your brother.
I'm your brother. Whom ye sold into Egypt. You got sin. You did wrong. God says the same thing to us. Come on, I'm God Almighty. Whom you have sinned against. All right. So, you sold me into Egypt. Now therefore, be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither. For God did send me before you to preserve what? Life. Joseph got it. In his mind, he sees it now. The brother are still like processing this. So Joseph is letting them know, I know y'all probably thinking, oh, it's payback time. That's not what's going to happen here. You're not going to see payback time. I'm Joseph, your brother. He says, whom you sold into Egypt. And he says, now don't be grieved nor angry with your what? With yourselves. Right? What did Jesus say about our sins? He said, do what? He's going to do what? Cast them into what? The sea of forgetting. He's going to separate his sins from us as far as the what? The east is from the west. All right? And so what Joseph is trying to get his brothers to do is to understand that I know what you did for evil, but God has turned it into what? Good. Into good. And he's trying to help them to get to that point, because right now he can see they got some fear in them. All right. Be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. So here's the key. When Joseph was being sold by his brothers, did God see this? And this is where we get frustrated sometimes with God. God, you know what I'm going through. You know I'm about to be sold to these foreigners and my brothers. Where is my protection? And we might start quoting all the scriptures about protection, right? You know, God, my strength, no weapon formed against me. And we're going to quote, but yet we still being carted down by the Midianites and the Ishmaelites to be sold down to the Egyptians. I know you put yourself in that situation. You be like quoting all the scriptures, right? Lord, what's going on here? Have mercy. I'm being dragged out of my family, and these strangers. I'm being sold. But it was part of what? God's plan. And this is why people sometimes have a hard time with God, because they want all the things to happen to only be what we perceive as positive, not knowing that God allows difficulty. Jesus said that if they do this to me, they will do it to what? To you.
He said, harm yourself likewise.
Exactly. But
What chapter is that?
That's in Matthew, right?
we'll find it. We'll put it in the computer. We'll come up with it. But so with the understanding that there are things that the Lord went through that were difficult, but He knew they were all part of the victory. How do we process this? Do we know what I'm going through is part of the victory? All right. Now, the brothers don't understand this. Joseph is starting to get it, and he's trying to convey this now to the brothers. And so he goes in verse 6. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land. So we've had a famine for 2 years. And then he says, and yet there are another 5 years in which there shall be neither earning nor harvest. All right, so we got 5 more years to go. God has me here because I was able to give instruction from God to Pharaoh to produce this harvest in the 7 years of what? Plenty. During the 7 years of plenty, we were able to build. And God used me for that, and that's why He's in His position. And we talked about that, how, from Joseph's standpoint, how he was able to go from where he was to where he is. All right? Verse 8. So now it was not you. Look at this. Look at what he's saying here. So this is how you know Joseph is good. This is a statement of forgiveness here that Joseph is saying. Look at verse 8. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God. You see that? Joseph recognized that, yes, he allowed the brother to hate so that they could do what they did, so that Joseph could be where he needed to be, and now God can do what He needs to do. Difficult times, difficult circumstances, difficult situations, but God is what? Still sovereign. I think it's important that sometimes we pause and take an understanding of what sovereignty is. That God knows all, controls all. His will is going to be done. Now, when we speak of that, the scriptures tell me, it says, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that what? Whosoever believe in Him
shall have eternal life.
shall not die, but shall have everlasting life. Okay. So the key word in there of how it's applied is the word whosoever. Because it says God so loved the world. All right. So it didn't say God so loved the believers. God so loved Israel. God so loved the church. God so loved the bride of Christ. It said God so loved the world. So that means his payment for sin covers what sin?
All
sin. Everybody?
everybody.
What about people like Hitler?
God has no respect of a person.
Okay. So the thing to keep in mind is that that sovereign will, yet God does still already know when He makes the call who's coming.
Amen.
So then you get into that debate that you see the Calvinists and the what's the other group? I'm drawing a blank here. Calvinists and the well, anyway, people that believe in people that are predestined versus people that have free will. And I like to say it ain't either, and it's both. Because if you look at it from God's perspective, God knows. You look at it from your perspective, you're ignorant. And that's about as far as I can go. Because there are things that God does that I can't explain. I can't. I can understand what he says, and I can understand the instructions on how to operate, but I can't get into it and explain the mechanism. Okay? Now, like those cars out there. See, I can utilize those cars. Give me the key, I can get in and I can do it. Now, but if you take every piece that's connected apart and tell me now, you put it back together, well, I'll be walking. Because I don't know how to do that.
Amen.
And it's the same thing with some things that God presents. God says, can you believe this? And I go, I can believe it. And then somebody says, well, if you believe it, explain it to me. Look, I'm going to explain it to you the best I can, but I guarantee you it's not going to be sufficient. I'm going to have some what? Some voidness into it. I'm going to have some emptiness, because there's certain things that God does that I just have to do what? Trust and believe and have what? Faith.
And without faith, it's impossible.
To the point, exactly. That's just where I was going. To the point where God says, see, God didn't say, if you don't understand me, it's impossible for you to be saved. He didn't say that. He didn't say, if you can comprehend me, it's impossible. No, he said, without faith, it's impossible to please God. So I have to just operate in that.
God must first believe that.
Must believe. So, when you look at this statement that Joseph makes, and why it's so important, because this shows the sovereignty of God, the fact that God knows and work things out according to his own plan and purpose. So when he says, and Joseph gets it now, he says now, because the brother was like, what do you mean God did this? We were the ones that sold you, dude. We did this. We were angry. I hated you. And that's why I sold you. But Joseph was like, no, man, that has nothing to do with it. Verse 8 says, so now it was not you that sent me hither, but God. That's an important change of mind, change of thinking that oftentimes we need to try to have in our difficult situations. And he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and Lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. God did this because of what you thought you were trying to do for what? For evil. Has ye go up to my father, and say unto him, thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me Lord of all Egypt. I want you now to go and proclaim my what? My word. You go and tell our father what's going on. Come down unto me, and what? Tarry not. Don't be long. Bring him here. All right, verse 10. And thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, thou and thy children, and thy children's children, and thy flocks, and thy herds, and all that thou hast. And there will be nourished, and there will I nourish thee, and ye nourish you there for 5 years of the famine, lest thou and thy household and all that thou hast come to poverty. So I'm going to keep you from the poverty through the power in which God has blessed me to do all that we did here. Now I read this and I think back to when God was making his covenant with Abraham. And if I had been planned this better, I would have had that verse. I don't have it. But when God called Abraham and told Abraham, take a look at all this land. He said, you're going to be given this land. But your descendants will go down into Egypt and will be there for 400 years. Right? So now herein is the beginning of that promise that was given to Abraham by God. All right? And so you read this that Joseph is saying, and you go, now you can piece this together, that Abraham, the Abrahamic covenant is beginning to take fruition here. It took a couple of generations. Abraham had to have Isaac and then Jacob and now Joseph. All right. So now in this fourth generation from Abraham, this is beginning to happen. And Jacob is going to come down. And Jacob is coming into Egypt. And yet, while in Egypt, who's prospering? Joseph. And who's going to get the benefit of it? His family. Egypt is a type of what? Sin. So in the midst of sin, God is producing what? A blessing. Wow. How can that be? Oh, but wait a minute. Who came into this world? Jesus. And this world is what? Fallen. So in the midst of sin, a sinful world, Jesus came and brought what? Blessing. In Egypt. Before we were what? Taken out of Egypt. There's going to be a point where they are taken what? Out of Egypt. But while you're yet in Egypt, I got a blessing for you. I got provisions for you. I got sustainability for you in the difficult place that don't know me like you know me. Their culture don't worship me. Their nationality don't have my philosophy. They have a whole different philosophy. Sound like the world we're living in now? America likes to pride themselves as being a so-called Christian nation. I would differ with that.
Watch the halftime show.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we would talk about that. And so you look at this and you see some of the things that we see. My wife was sitting there we were watching TV and these commercials came up. And I won't even get into the details, but my wife was like, this world is going to hell. I was like, well. I said, well, you know, it's being shown for what it is. This culture is this culture. Egypt is Egypt. But in the midst of that, God can still do what? He can bless you. He can nourish you. He can provide for you. All right? And so oftentimes we struggle, and sometimes you ever get the feeling, I would just like to be in heaven. You know, just want to be with the Lord. Just want to enjoy the good things that the Lord. But yet we still have to go through our Egyptian walk in this culture in which there is still a different philosophy than the philosophy of those that believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and following the work of Jesus. All right. So, verse 12, it says, and behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that it is my mouth that speak unto you. So he's telling you, my brother, and he's saying specifically to Benjamin, look, it's me. I'm speaking unto you. And ye shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt. So tell my father what's going on. Tell him that I have authority here. And this can absolutely happen. And for all that ye have seen. And ye shall hasten and bring down my father hither. So he says, you're going to make some speed, go down and bring my father to where I am. And he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept upon him. Now those are the two full brothers. And so now they're weeping and crying together because they're beginning to understand. Look at what God has done. The emotion of it all. The unbelievable aspect that in all that I thought, my older brother is dead. My father's grieving and all this. And now Benjamin is recognizing, no, my older brother is here. And look at what's happening. And Joseph thinking, my brethren, well, I'll never see them again until they walked in that time. And then they'll never really care for me. And they probably treat Benjamin the same way they wanted to treat me. And then him beginning to understand, no, they've changed. And sometimes you got to give people that, man. Because some people are rotten, man, until God does something to them. And they change. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, to look at a person and he said, you know, I'm not the same person. But then Joseph was able to see through the circumstances to get the evidence. They changed. They're different. Because
Paul.
look at Paul. Exactly. Exactly. Paul's a very good example for that. And so now they're relaxed. They're not relaxing, but they're being comforted in each other. Verse 15 says, moreover, he kissed all his brethren and wept upon them. And after that his brethren talked with him. So now they're beginning to just conversate. This is one of the portions of Scripture that I wish they could have elaborated on. I wonder what they talked about. You know, what was the conversation like? You know,
How do you survive? How do you get this high?
yeah. You know, so that, you know, and I'm sure some of that may have came up.
My bad, I sold you in slavery.
Sorry, you said that we were going to kneel before you.
Yeah, we should write in there. And the brother, we should write in, and the brother said, "My bad." Yeah. So you wonder what that conversation was about, but the Scripture doesn't give. So we move on. 16. And the fame thereof was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brothers are come, and it pleased Pharaoh well and his servants. So now Pharaoh begins to get the news of what's going on, and Pharaoh says unto Joseph, say unto your brethren, do ye. Lade your beasts and go down you unto your land of Canaan, and take your father and your household and come unto me. So now he's getting it right from the head. Joseph already was going to do this, but now he doesn't have to convince Pharaoh. Pharaoh's coming and doing it what? Without him even having to ask. Look at that.
That's still God. That's still God working it out in his
Joseph
favor.
in
In
his
his
favor,
favor.
showing that God is with him.
Because he could have went the other way.
He could have went the other way. Well, later on we'll see, because there's going to be another Pharaoh that's going to come about that what? Doesn't know Joseph, knew not Joseph.
Yeah,
But
that's
thank
another
God, this Pharaoh. And sometimes it's good, even though you're in the land of Egypt, you're in the land that is typified as being sin. If you got good people in what? Leadership. See, that's an important aspect there.
Isn't it in Proverbs it says, if a man is righteous, you'll be able to live amongst your enemies in peace?
Exactly. Yep. And so you can be in a culture. You can have the stuff that's going around here in America that's happening, and somehow or another, it's just not getting in you. And that's just God being able to inoculate you from the devastating effects that sometimes can happen when you're living in a world that has sold itself over. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Because you can think about Lot. Lot was living in where? Sodom. But you can look at what happened into Lot, and it's like he was still God's man, but he suffered some difficult situations.
Yes.
Because he allowed some of that to be absorbed in him. All right, so there's a couple of things that we can pick from that. But moving forward, and verse 18, and take your father and your household and come unto me, and I will give you the good of the land of Egypt, and ye shall eat the fat of the land. All right, and that means you're going to eat what? Some good food, right? And they have a bunch of food stored up. Why? Because of the dream Pharaoh had, that Joseph was able to what? Interpret. And who gave the dream to Pharaoh? God. All right, and who gave the interpretation to Joseph?
God.
So who's in control?
God.
Verse 19. Now, thou art commanded, this do ye. Take you wagons out of the land of Egypt for your little ones. So, in other words, go make it easy for yourself. I don't want the little, and why do I want the little ones to be in wagons? Because the little ones walk what? Slow. So he's telling them, I don't want this to be like an everyday journey. I want this to be a horse-driven journey. I want you to move at the speed of the animal, not the speed of man's pace. So I want you to move what? Move quickly. So go get the wagon, go get the Lexus and the Mercedes and the Benz, and let's bring them on up, right? Get the wagons out of the land of Egypt, and your little ones, and your wives, and bring your fathers, and come. Also regard not your stuff. So he said, don't be trying to, like, okay, what else can we bring? And laying down the stuff to make the ride heavier. That incidental stuff that y'all got, leave it.
Leave it.
Don't bring that with you. Only bring stuff that you absolutely need. Why? For the good of all the land of Egypt is yours. Don't bring that stuff because we already got it here. You don't need don't try to bring your bed because we got a bed. Don't bring your cooking stove because we got one here. Don't bring all that other stuff. Just get your personal things and come on up. Verse 21. And the children of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the commandment of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the way. To all of them he gave each man's change of raiment, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver. Wow. Okay, so Benjamin's getting what? He's getting paid. And 5 changes of raiment. Remember before when he had the dinner and everybody was sitting there and they getting eaten, and everybody got a provision of food, but Benjamin had what? 5 times. And I made the joke, his plate was probably as big as this table, right? Just eat till you're full. All right, verse 23. And to his father he sent after this manner 10 asses laden with good things of Egypt, and 10 she-asses laden with corn and bread and meat for his father by the way. So he's letting them know, I'm not going to just give you some stuff to put in your sacks like I did last time. We're going to allow some animals to carry down loads of corn and bread and meat, so that when you're traveling back, you're going to eat well. You're not going to have traveling snack. You're going to have traveling meals. Right? So from the time the wagon train gets to the father, the good food starts what? Then. It starts before you get there. It's going to start the minute they get there, and then on the way back, you already now have plenty of what? Corn and bread and meat. All right, and that's an important thing too. I could spend some time on that, but
that's that jailbreak.
Let me just say on that God's blessing oftentimes can start before you actually get to your destination.
Amen.
So you're on your way. You're on your way there. You're going to get there. You're not there what? Yet. But in the journey, you're still being blessed. All right? In the journey. God's got his hand on you. You're going to eat well. You're going to feel good. You're going to have the right things that you need. We could equate the corn, the bread, and the meat to things other than natural food. Remember when Jesus met the woman at the well, and the disciples went out to get some food in Samaria, and then when they came back, they had the food, but Jesus was giving them the impression that he was full, and they were like, well, did somebody else feed him? Did somebody else give him a sandwich? We went to go get some food, but somebody else feed him. And Jesus said, I have food to eat that you what? Know not of. So we oftentimes need to keep in mind that sometimes you can be full with the things of God. And so before we even get to heaven, we can still have heavenly what? Food. Before we get to be the eternal being, we can experience the nourishment of the eternal being before we get our new bodies, is what I'm trying to say.
Amen.
We can still absorb that. And that's kind of like what we're doing even right now. Like what Wayne was saying when he was in rehabilitation, that he's just been reading through and then going through. And what is he doing? He's nourishing himself. Mm-hmm. You're feeding with the good of the land. Mm-hmm. All right? In a land that oftentimes cries the poverty of spiritual things. Well, I'll tell you, these other thoughts pop in my mind. Let me just say this. I'm not going to try to be long on this, but the rate of suicide in not just America, but worldwide, has now risen to the point where it has surpassed accidental death, like car accidents and things like that. It has passed that. Well, what's going on in our world? That people are just like, I'm done. And not just, like I said, not just America, but in Europe and other places, that the people are just quit, and they're calling, I don't want to live anymore, as being the answer. Well, when you have no what? Hope. Right? That's a bad thing. All right, and I'll move along because I could spend some time on that. But thank God for the bread and the corn and the meat that provides not just the natural but also the what? The spiritual. So he sent his brethren away, and they departed, and he said unto them, see that ye fall not out by the way. Now, what is Joseph saying? Joseph is saying, don't deviate. Don't take no excursions nowhere else. Go straight there and do what? Come straight back. All right. And so that's what the Lord wants us to do. Once you find Jesus, you don't need to experiment with serving something else. You know Jesus, serve him.
Amen.
25. And they went up out of Egypt and came unto the land of Canaan, unto Jacob their father. And here's a remarkable thing. You can almost imagine in your mind's eye what's happening here. And told him, saying, Joseph is yet alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart, what? Fainted, for he believed them not. All right? So he's like, look, don't play with me like this. All right? I mean, y'all don't understand the depth of the hurt that I have when y'all came back the first time with that coat of many colors, all ripped up and dipped in blood, which they knew it was ghost blood. He thought it was Joseph's blood. Don't play with me like this. What are you talking about?
But the amount of emotion that he had, from angry to you kidding me to praising the Lord that he's still alive.
Exactly.
I would faint too. I would pass out. I would pass out swinging though. Somebody would have got whipped.
Don't hit him. Just lay there.
No, I would be. Those boys would have got whipped.
I said, so explain to me that coat.
That's how you know man didn't write this story. Because Reuben would have got an arrow in the eye.
Yep.
Judas would have got his head chopped off.
That's right. That's
Would
right.
lie to me
What did you tell me he did?
for years.
And let me believe it.
Even for years. Did you not love me? You let me believe this lie for years.
What he say? He was
They
alive?
never thought this was gonna come back.
5 years.
Exactly.
Yeah, they thought they were doing it, but God was doing
God was
it.
working it out.
7 years.
It's an amazing story.
It is.
7
I
years.
mean, it happened.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's why they say, love your wife, love your husband, stop arguing with your husband, be nice to your husband. If he slap you one time on the right, slap you on the side, talk, be nice.
You didn't say that.
We ain't going there.
We ain't going there. No,
We're going to leave that one alone. Let's go to the next
I'm
one.
gonna tell you, we going right to verse 27. That's where we going. Verse 27. And they told him all the words of Joseph. So what did they give? They gave Jacob the what? The word of Joseph. Right? What does the Lord give us?
His word.
His word. All the words of Joseph, which he had said unto them. And when he saw the what? The wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob, their father, revived. So he was like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Okay, y'all could be lying, but wait a minute. I see the wagons. And those are Egyptian wagons.
Right.
Royalty.
Yeah, those are the Lexus and the Cadillac wagons. These
Royalty.
are the real wagons here.
That's right.
Yeah, bro, it's suspension.
I'm telling you,
Teslas and all that.
all that.
The track of rose petals like that. Whoa.
So he saw the modern day transportation. Let's put it that way. His spirit revived. He's like, man, I'm going to ride down there in style.
He said spirit.
And Israel said, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die. Look at that. So,
Just,
go ahead.
just to bring out, Sister said, he saw the ride, the wagon that they had, but the spirit that embodied the whole caravan is what touched his spirit, and to make him know that this is true.
This is true. My father.
It is, and
My
your
son
sister
was
said that.
alive.
She said the
Yeah, well,
spirit.
you see,
That's from the elderlies.
it said Jacob, their father, revived. They wanted to say the next verse.
Israel.
Israel.
Yeah.
It's God work.
That's
It's
right.
God's
That's
work.
right.
That's right.
That's
It's
right.
God work.
That's right.
Now he's Israel.
Now
Now,
you.
that's right.
That's right. Use. That's right, brother.
Yeah, that's
Go
the
ahead.
spirit.
Go ahead, brother.
Yeah.
Wayne. Break it down, Wayne.
And that's
Break it
an
down,
important.
brother.
Israelite.
I told you they said ain't nothing wrong with this.
That's,
See, the light came on.
and that's an important aspect because he's one of the few people whom God changed the name, but yet the Spirit of God still uses what? Both names.
That's right.
Sometimes it uses Jacob,
Jacob.
and sometimes it uses Israel. And when you're reading through it, and I'm glad you picked that up, because there are times when it's being used Jacob to specifically point out this is the natural way of interacting. But when it uses Israel, it's the spiritual way a lot of times. And so that oftentimes it's like us. We are of what? Two natures.
Two natures of who?
Natural and what?
Spiritual.
We'll have dual what? Citizenship.
Citizenship.
And
Personality.
dual. And so when you think about even when the description, and I'll close with this, where it says we're serving the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We often can look at Abraham as the father of what? Of faith. And he has that fatherly aspect which can be typified as representing the Godhead of the Father. Isaac was the one that was offered, was told to be offered by Abraham. And he was the son, the sacrifice. And so he can be typified as the son. And then Jacob, who was changed, would be then typified as the what? The spirit. But the Spirit does what? Jesus said, I will go and I will send another what? Comforter. And he will be with you. And the Spirit is twofold. The Spirit can come upon you, and it also can be in you. And so depending on how you are, you need to sometimes have the Spirit come upon you, and sometimes you really want the Spirit to be what? In you. So a lot of times Jacob is Jacob because he's working amongst the Spirit. Israel is working because the Spirit is working through him. And that's an aspect of how we can be oftentimes, and we are typified like that as well. All right, so this is a beautiful thing. And also, let me just add to that. When it talks about the Spirit is separate, but then when the Spirit is in us, that's God working what? Through us.
Through us.
And I can go further on because then I can go into, well, then that's about the bride and all that. But we're going to stop because I'm past my time. We'll pick that up another
I
time.
wanted to say something when you talk about the suicide. I was having a bad day. At least I thought I was. And there's a guy, he was like 2 rooms down from me. His name was Joseph. And he would be in therapy. Every time he touched me, he'd go, ow, ow. Just playing. And everybody come running to me and said, I'm just playing. Let me have my fun. So one day I was having a bad day. We were doing occupational therapy. He was sitting right in front of me just like this here. And they said, Wayne, what's wrong? I said, man, I'm just having bad. I don't want to do nothing. Nothing. I don't want to do nothing. So what's wrong? I said, I didn't sleep good. So we sitting there talking, and it just came up. He started talking about his son, 43 years old, worth $240 million. And he said he killed himself. He committed suicide. Said he blew his brains out. They found the gun on the shelf. He sat in the chair. He blew his brains out. But the gun is up on the shelf. How you blow his brains out?
Did it flip out his hand, or
No,
the
he
guy
must-
that shot him put it
No,
on?
he shot himself and threw it up on the shelf.
No.
Can't happen. You blow your brains out, gun right there.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, this man goes through this every day, and I'm sitting there talking about, I had a bad day.
Yeah.
I said, boy, you need to wake up and get it together.
Yeah.
I mean, this man goes through this every day. And this happened in Florida, and they tell him, no, he committed suicide.
There's no possible way.
But his wife leaves with $100 million.
Well, you would think even a shooter would know to drop it on the ground.
Yeah.
Because in all naturality, when you shoot a gun, your muscles contract and hold on to it.
Right.
So whatever you do, your hand is still locked there. That means somebody had to pry that out.
Right.
My buddy's dad killed himself. He shot himself in the chest, and then when they found him, he was dead. He had 2 shots, one in the chest and another one in the head. They said he shot himself in the chest. He was sitting on his back porch, and they said it's a long time. You'll die from shooting yourself in the chest, but when you shoot yourself and you're waiting for you to die, so then he shot himself a second time in the head, and then he died. So I mean, it's bizarre. You know?
The body does
I don't believe that.
I think somebody shot that man. You're talking about.
Somebody had to. There's no way. There's no way.
On the shelf.
He's gonna put the gun on the shelf.
Yeah.
No, that's
I mean, unless
I
you
can't
get
even
survive with a kick out.
I can't
you
even
know.
see him setting it on the table. All I can do is see him shooting himself. When he does like that, it's either locked in his hand, like he said, he dropped it on the floor.
We'd have to have been there at the scene to really make a. We're getting a
Just
third
like
hand
he said, they
information.
don't want to investigate it or nothing.
Well, that's because of the land that we live in. We are living in a land where our culture and people
And after that,
will do.
I said, I ain't never gonna have a bad day out here. Never.
Yeah,
You
because
know,
now,
because
he's
me
living
and
this
him,
life.
we go to, when I come out my door, I run right into him in the chair.
You said he was married,
His son was.
or his son was married,
Yeah,
so the
yeah.
wife was gonna leave him?
I don't know what, I don't know. But she walked off with $100 million.
He
Yeah.
was married, maybe the wife said she was gonna leave. And he killed
Well,
himself.
that's another thing, because money will make you do a lot of things.
a lot of crazy things.
I don't care about what the wife did. I'm just saying, I can't see a man blowing his brains out and putting his gun on the shelf.
No.
I can't see it. I mean, like you said, you need to be there, but my mind tells me somebody killed that man. It's
Yeah,
just-
somebody killed that man. There's no possible way.
There's no
Same
way
thing
you
with,
put the
with
gun
my
on
buddy's
shelf.
dad. They found 2
Unless
shots.
it's a
They're
shelf,
like,
unless
it's
it's
his
a
wife
shelf
that
down
did
here,
it.
but when you say
His wife
shelf,
didn't do it.
he talking about putting the gun over there.
Yeah.
But he shot himself, got up.